I'm a firm believer about learning. So transform is actually not something new. We designed this, Nana, what was it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? We've always wanted to do that. We thought that this is the time that we have to actually start to impart, to impact. But you didn't come here for me. You came here for somebody different. He's got insights. He's got a lot of view, and he's got a lot of answers to some of the questions. Some of you know I have challenges with talent because some of us don't want it enough, and I can't be the guy that wants it more than the talent. It can't work. But it's working with Fela that has actually brought me to a different place about development of talent. So without further ado, Ghana, let's show some love for our guest tonight for our first Transform series, Fela Oke.
I started these sessions a while ago, demystifying representation. And what this whole thing is about is really, when people talk about agents and they talk about managers, there's a mystique about what we do, and there's also a mystique about how people can utilize agents and managers and the relationship between talent and agents and managers. So this is part of a bigger thing I'm doing, and you'll find that out when that comes out. But I thought, let me start with these sessions. A little bit about myself. It's up there if you can read it. I've been around for a while, about 20 years. A little bit more than that. I grew up in the UK. Well, actually born and bred in the UK. And I started my career in advertising, actually, selling advertising space. So my whole life has been some kind of representation, whether I'm representing a brand or whether I'm representing platforms. And then the last 10 years, I've been representing talent at different levels. I moved back to Nigeria, I think 2011, to work, actually. I went to Lagos as part of the Fela on Broadway team. I don't know if you heard about it, the musical from Broadway when he went to Nigeria. And I hadn't been to Lagos for a long, long time. And that was my first intro back, and you'll see some pictures later. So that kind of brought me back to Africa, and then from there, my career kind of just went, pretty fast in Africa. I've been at MTV as commercial director, Trace as commercial director for Anglophone Africa. We launched Spinlet in Nigeria back in 2012. That was our Africa HQ. And I actually used to come to Accra quite a bit back then, signing different artists, D Black, Ochame, I think, and a few others. Efia, we all spoke during those times. And then after that, I kind of morphed into my own organization. I had a licensed agency based out of Lagos, but focused on Africa for Warner Brothers. And then from there, my career just grew. It's all there, you can read it. I don't want to bore you, but basically I've been in the industry for about I'm much older than I look. And this picture was when I was toying with a gray beard.
The general perception of African talents want to be in Hollywood, where in fact what they really want to do is to be seen, say, in America. So like you said, Atlanta becoming known as the Black Hollywood would be an easy alternative for them. So how easy is it to get into that space as well, and not looking at it so much as Hollywood, but in terms of getting work in the US per se?
There's no real right answer to that. The only answer is as a talent, you have to be at the top of your game. So, for example, as a local talent here, first of all, let's even talk about paperwork, right? To even be able to get work in the States, you gotta be able to get the paperwork. And under the current president, man, we might as well just say, you know what, forget America, let's focus on him. Because it's 10 times as hard as it used to be. Back in maybe 5 years ago, if you were a local, well-known Ghanaian talent, you got all the media exposure, you've had so much PR, press, and all of that stuff. You could use that to get what they used to call an O visa to go and work in the States. Now, what started to happen was all the studios now no longer accept O visas. Not just for Africans, but anybody. So Sony, all the big studios, they don't accept O visas anymore. Now it's most likely you have to have a green card. But there's a specialist green card for creatives, right? So to answer your question, I think the first things first is to ensure that you are the best talent you can be, right? Now what does that mean? That could mean, talent is a very subjective thing. I'm not standing there and saying, I'm not gonna say Denzel is better than Bobby De Niro. My opinion might be Denzel is better, but it's subjective. And people get too caught up on this idea that once I'm an actor, I must be better than so-and-so. It's impossible, right? Because, if you walk away with anything today, there's some obvious talent, right? that you see and they just don't have it, right? You can train to be an actor. And I'll talk about training. You can train to be a performer, Sometimes you can train to sing, but sometimes singing is natural. Most of us sing in the shower, and we know that coming out of the shower, let's forget about it, right? But what I'll say to you or anybody here, you gotta be at the top of your game. That means you gotta be well trained. I no longer believe, when I was at boarding school, I did theater, I did Shakespeare. That's where this whole thing came from, and I played a lot of sports. And I knew that with regards to theater, I was winging it, right? I was just getting by, but I had to do it because I had to pass drama in English. But sports, I was naturally gifted, right? And it's the same with now. You gotta know what you're good at. You gotta be honest with yourself. Like you really have to, and you gotta look in the mirror and say to yourself, is this really the career I wanna get into? Whether you're singing, whether you're acting, whatever it is, you gotta be totally honest with yourself, because first and foremost, you're entering probably the most heartbreaking type of career you're ever going to enter, right? It's the toughest thing. It's subjective. It can happen today, 10 years. It could take you another 10 years to get that break, right? So I think people have to be, one thing maybe not Ghana, I'm not from here. I haven't spent too much time here. But Nigeria, I know for a fact, everybody thinks they're a star. Everybody. Right? Now that's a function of the society, that's a function of how aspirational we are as Africans. And I think I can say the same for Ghanaians, right? But at the same time, you have to kind of say, is this what I really want to do? Am I going to give up in 5 years' time? Or can I keep going, irrespective of earning money? So back to your question about what you need to do to get seen. The only thing you need to do is to be at the top of your game here. That's all you need to do, right? If you are the best actor that you can be, the best musician that you can be, trust me, the lights will come at you, right? 3 years ago, Rudy, right? Burna Boy, where was he? Right? He was around, he was doing some small things, he was trying to, he had a bad attitude, but he was trying. Right? 3 years later, he nearly won a Grammy. Because one thing Burner always believed was his talent, and this is all he wants to do. Same with Wizkid, same with some of your stars here, Sarkodie. I remember seeing Sarkodie in Lagos 10 years ago. And he wasn't opening for P Square. He came to perform as, I think he did one song. 10 years later, he's probably the biggest artist there. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I would say. But it's important. I think people need to take that seriously because Hollywood right now, or Atlanta, Tyler Perry Studios, New York, there's 8 million Africans in that, 8 million Nigerians alone in the diaspora. You know what I mean? So if I add everyone else, let's say there's maybe 15 million Africans in the diaspora. Before, I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you can't get there. I am saying you've got to have a solid foundation.
So first of all, I'd like to commend you on your efforts. I believe it's very impressive for people like you to come back to Africa and try to make an impact here. And you know, I believe we can also form a huge industry here with regards to movies and music. Our music is doing very well already, but I think there's another problem with financing because we know that Hollywood, some movies actually make a lot of money from product placement and even from the cinema. But here in Africa, it's not like that, and without the adequate budget, it's difficult to produce a movie that can transcend the borders of Africa. And so I'd like to know what are the creative ways of like gaining finance for the movies, and also if it's possible to even get people to finance the movies from Hollywood, because on the structure there I see indie financing, and I'd like to know more about that.
Thanks. I appreciate your comments. And all I can say to the first comment is we don't have a choice but to come home, right? We really don't have a choice. I can stay in America and pretend that there's no glass ceiling, but honestly there is a glass ceiling even for Africans. So it's a must that we must come home, and it's a must that people like Rave and Rudy and his team do things like this, because it's about opening up the opportunities and the potential. Financing. It's a tough one. So for example, in Nigeria now, in South Africa, I'm not sure about Ghana, so you gotta forgive me. Central Bank have started a fund for the creative industries. I think it's $200 million that goes towards the creative industries.
The Central Bank of Nigeria.
It's not my central bank. Yes, the Central Bank of Nigeria has created a fund for the creative industry.
Wow.
Repeat.
Wow.
The Central Bank of Nigeria.
Is there a government person here? Because he keeps asking me to repeat. No. So the CBN have created this Creative Industry Finance Initiative. $200 million. Before that, Bank of Industry was set up during Jonathan's time, and they had $200 million to go towards financing films. Now, whenever a central bank does those kind of initiatives, it's loans, right? BOI have given out, I think, over $150 million in loan to filmmakers and creative people and people trying to set up distribution companies in Nigeria. That has a positive and a negative effect. The negative side to that kind of financing is they'll never get that money back, right? Now, that money is dispersed through your retail banks, right? If you go to a retail bank for a loan today, what are they going to ask you for?
Collateral.
Huh?
Collateral.
Collateral, right?
Yeah.
Now, you're a writer, creative, you're just trying to make it, right? I'm not sure. I don't know if you own your own home. Let's just say you're renting, right? You're renting a house. You want to borrow, I don't know, $50,000, whatever. right? They're gonna ask you to put down 30% of your own money, or put your house as collateral. So it's difficult in the creative industry. They've managed to do it. Some people have managed. BOI have done it in Nigeria first. This second phase of financing is the tough part, because they're asking people to put down collateral. Most creatives don't have that, because you're a creative. It's everything is up there. IP is what you survive by, right? Then there's other types of finance: private equity, loans, family and friends. But the minute you get into any kind of structured financing, it gets a little bit complicated. Now, I can't stand here and say I can tell you what to do or how to bridge that gap, but I think the first place, and I think that's what Nigeria is trying to do, the government has to play a part, right? Because that could kickstart the industry. So the central bank loan now goes. So I'll tell you the numbers in naira, and you can do the math. I don't know the math in dollars. For a filmmaker, they'll give between 30 million and 50 million naira to shoot a film. If you wanted to build a distribution platform, I think you can get up to 500 million naira. So that's about $1.3 million. And then in between, they've got loans for fashion, etc., etc. Now, forget all of that. Before you're able to even say you want to make a film, you got to look at the industry as a whole, right? How many cinemas in Ghana?
The most. Akamo, West Coast Smith.
Rudy, what?
My man. Madina, take me to Madina. Madina to go see Sekina. Madina, take me to Madina. Madina to go see Sekina. Thank you very much. My name is Fela Oke. Thank you very much.